You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast, episode 162 of the year, which might be the last episode of 2021. And we're delighted to be joined by Rory O'Connor, the founder and CEO of Scurry. Rory, you're very welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Rian. Delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you, man. Typical fashion of the show, Rory, is first couple of minutes getting to know you, early influences, and then we jump into the good part of the podcast. But let's rewind the clock. If I've done my research correctly, you grew up in Wexford.
Correct.
Any favorite standout memories of your childhood? Things like pre-15 years old.
Yeah, I love being outside in the outdoors. So, we've got the sea, which is a big part of my life, and the outdoors. So anything that's outdoors, I loved, whether it was camping, kind of fishing, surfing, being on the beach, swimming, etc., snorkeling, anything like that. Boat, water, and outdoors, can't beat it.
I know you're a yellow belly and you're living there now at the moment, but you did study in Waterford IT. According to your LinkedIn, it was entrepreneurship. So I'm curious to know, why did you pick that to get a degree in?
So I did that. I kind of left after school. I went to WIT for about a year. Didn't do so well in WIT for the first time that I went there. I got a job after 1 year in Waterford Crystal, and then I went back to study. And I did most of my study after going back. So I did a national cert, diploma, degree, and then MBA and all kinds of other things afterwards. So I found it studying really a lot easier once I knew what I was doing. I found it very difficult in the beginning, kind of picking something and finding it relevant for me. I see that a lot with kids as well, with the current education system, that they're not really sure what they want to do and they get lost, and keep reminding them that it's important to just go out and enjoy yourself, kind of learn in the world, and then you can focus on what you want to do. You're not a failure because you can't decide what you want to be at 16 or 17.
That's a solid message to spread, Rory, and you're now well qualified as well. One more question before we move on to the main part of the podcast. It's around impact and influence. People can usually count on one hand the number of people that have had an impact on them, a positive impact on them in their early years, whether it's a teacher, a acquaintance, a close friend, a family member. And what I mean by impact in their early years, such an impact in their early years that it's helped them become the person they are today. Does any one particular person spring to mind for you?
Yeah, I think when I joined Waterford Crystal, there was a guy there who I worked for, and he was the head of customer service, a guy called George McDonald, and he just kind of saw something in me, encouraged me to go back and do my education, encouraged me to kind of do my best in work, and I think you're right, having somebody like that can change somebody's life, and I think he was a big influence on me. And then as I went on after that, there was a couple of other people, but I think that was the biggest influence really at that stage in early formative years of my life. Yeah.
Well, shout out to him. You've mentioned Waterford Crystal twice now. I'm assuming on your LinkedIn it was called Waterford Wedgwood. That's the holding company, if I'm correct.
Exactly. Yeah. So
gotcha.
It was PLC. Yeah.
So you started there in 1991. You spent you spent over 13 years there. The question I have here is, knowing now that you're the CEO of Scurry, what lessons did you carry from your time there to now being the CEO of Scurry? And what I mean by lessons, any kind of skills or behaviors that you honed or worked on during those 13 years that still stand to you today?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot there. I think it was very formative in terms of my development. Started kind of right at the very bottom. I think one of the main things was that if you worked hard, there was all kinds of opportunities for you. So with work and dedication, you could make progress. It had all the mechanisms to help you do that in terms of support and in terms of education, etc., but also kind of mentorship and opportunities, because it was a larger company, there was plenty of opportunities for you to move every couple of years. So I essentially probably moved role and kind of got promoted nearly every second year. And I kind of planned that maybe after 5 or 6 years I'd move on, but there was always another nice job, and kind of ended up in there kind of 13 years. And the other thing was I moved across a couple of areas. So I started off in customer service, went into sales, and spent some time in marketing. So yeah, I got a kind of a pretty wide kind of understanding of how the sales and marketing operations work.
Very cool. You're now the CEO of Scurri. Rather than me give the 30-second commercial, elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it, you do a much better job. So the mic is yours, Rory.
Yeah, so Scurri is basically a carrier management platform. What we do is we integrate delivery options to retailers to make it easier for their customers to receive their goods. It's quite as simple as that, and that seems quite a simple thing, but actually behind it all, it's not quite rocket science, but it's a little bit complicated, and we take that complexity away, take the friction out of it for our retail partners.
There was a blog put on your site, and I don't know if you were the author of it, so you might not be familiar with it, but it was around our 5 delivery predictions for 2022. And one thing that shocked me was it says UK returns, not global, UK returns are predicted to grow by over 27% by 2023, costing retailers an estimated £5.6 billion. Have you your own thoughts on how just that issue alone, returns, can perhaps be improved or tackled?
Yeah, I do. I think, returns we need to think, sustainability really, and, the way retailers sell, impacts returns. Of course, there's some things that, when you have a cooling off period and, kind of selling regulations and law, that means that people can actually return goods, which is good, obviously, for the consumer, but it does have a consequence. So there are serial returners, people who buy 5 or 6 items with a view of, wearing one and returning the other, 4. That has impacts on the, on the supply chain, and not only on the supply chain can manage it, but, for sort of sustainability in the long term. So I think education for, individuals, retailers need to, kind of encourage people to be just a little bit more thoughtful about, the impact of returns, because it's not just the bottom line. It does impact the bottom line for retailers, but they've built that into their margin. They understand that business model, and if the customers are doing that, they've kind of built a management system around it. I think the important thing is education as the consumer, as the impact of taking 5 products and returning 4 of them on the environment, etc. It is significant.
I also learned that not all the products, if you were to return them, actually go back on the shelf to be sold to other customers. So it can have a big impact on the environment.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it, particularly if it's kind of, you're buying something for €20, the cost of getting it back. So the cost of a failed delivery in the UK is 125 sterling. So, the cost of getting it back, getting it restocked, cleaned, etc., is far greater than the standard cost of that item. So unfortunately, it's probably more economically viable to destroy the products than to actually than to have them returned and to restock and to sell again.
Wow. I'll leave a link to your LinkedIn, your company website, and I mentioned this again before we finish, and also that blog as well, if anybody wants to go and read it. Rather interesting. There's many blind spots in businesses, and as the CEO, I'm sure you're aware of a number of them. Just to give you an insight into some of the ones that I'm thinking in my head are not creating a culture of accountability. This is businesses that are scaling and growing quite fast. Not having a process for onboarding, not building the bench, so if someone leaves, you don't know who to replace them with. When you look at other businesses in the early stage, let's say kind of just below 5 million in revenue, what are some of the blind spots that you see time and time again in those businesses that, like, is there a common blind spot that you see they keep falling down on, that if they just tweaked it or removed it or improved it, their business would be in a much better place revenue wise?
It's always easy anecdotally to look back, I think, on these, and whether they're blind spots, and I think in some instances they're known blind spots. So you've got as a scaling business, you've got limited resources, and you can only focus on a few things. So whilst we do definitely have, and I certainly have blind spots, in some cases, you know, that is the case, and you're focusing on, you know, we always try to focus on three things. So I talk to our, you know, our team about, you know, what's the big three things that you want to do this year, this quarter, this month, this week, this day. And that means if you're going to do three, there's a whole lot of other things that you're not able to do. And hopefully, if you pick on the three things that are most important, then you know you get those done. It kind of covers, or it kind of compensates for the other things that you're not doing. But by having focus means you're not doing something else. So yeah, I mean, we could always onboard our you know, our employees a lot better, but in the current environment, finding employees is really difficult. So you know, we focus on trying to find employees. We do a decent job, I hope, at onboarding them, but we could always do it a lot better, I think. And yeah, so there are, I would say, plenty of blind spots at the moment. We focus it the other way on what are the 3 or 4 things that we have to do, that we must do, that are so important for the company, and get every one of our kind of leaders in each of their areas to focus on what's the 3 things I must do, and then cover as much as you can as the other as you need to. But you know, what's the key for 3 things that you must focus on?
You talk about finding employees, and I know you're hiring rapidly. There was an Irish Times article I read on you guys. It was, you want to treble your workforce over the next 2 years to more than 120 employees. That's really
Yeah.
cool to hear. So focusing on hiring, there's a well-known Harvard Business Review article, a study by Harvard Business Review actually as well, that says the cost of a bad hire is 5 times the annual salary of that bad hire. So costly mistake on not just the employee, but missed opportunities is what makes up most of that kind of 5 times the annual salary. What does your hiring process look like so that you can avoid making as like more of those than you necessarily need to make?
Yeah, I think one of the key things for us is culture. So we have a culture interview. So we have a number of interviews in the process. So we have initially what we call a technical interview. We interview people technically for the role. Are they able to technically do the role, achieve the objectives that we'd have set out for that role? And so that's one. But the second, probably most important, and where probably most employees fail in terms of the interview process, is that we look at the interview our potential employees from a cultural point of view. We have 5 key values in the company, and you know, that interview is all around those values. There's no right and wrong answers to those questions that we ask usually. It's how do people kind of apply the values that we've set out in Scurri. Those values are, you know, kind of published, but it's, we love our customers, we love innovation, we love lean, we love success, we love fun and family. And you know, that's what we assess people on, is how do they fit in terms of the Scurri culture. And you know, when somebody comes and they're looking to join the organization, it's a 2-way process. So they're taking a huge risk, and they're moving from their existing organization, existing company, existing job, etc., to come to you. And you know, it's a big risk for them, and you're taking a risk on the other side, saying that, look, you know, will this person fit? So it's a 2-way street. So I think it's really important that we assess employees and give the chance for the employees to see what the values are that we live by in Scurri. And if they kind of get through that interview process, we may have a kind of a test or something like that that helps us then kind of finally assess you know, whether they're able to do the job. And then, like you said before, onboarding and you know, getting people to be coached and mentored is the next important thing in that process. But I think the culture interview is probably one of the most important things that we found over the years.
Interesting. There's a tool I regularly use called CARE. It's just like a quadrant, and it stands for keep, attain, recapture, and expand. And it's, you look at it kind of once a quarter and fill out accounts. So accounts that you want to keep, ones that you want to attain, recapture, and expand. And it kind of gives you a picture of, you know, starting how you plan to kind of grow over the next quarter, if not year. When you look at growth over the next 12 to 18 months, focusing just on the A and so the attain, how do you plan to continue to grow and land net new logos? Previous guests have said things like acquisitions, entering new markets, hiring more sales reps. For you, what does the next 12 to 18 months look like so that you can continue to grow?
Yeah, for us, it's we're building our sales and marketing capability. So I suppose up to now, Scurry has really kind of gotten to, probably we've shipped this year about 10.5 billion in gross merchandise value. We've a decent number of accounts there, over kind of 100 kind of really good kind of key accounts in the UK, and there's probably over maybe 15,000 customers using our software out there. But we believe we've just kind of got to the point of to some extent product market fit, and we're now in the scaling phase. So we're gone Series A, so that money that we're putting together is putting together a sales and marketing team. So for us, the growth now is we have been very successful in the Irish and UK market, but there's lots of opportunity still there. We see other European markets where we've been successful initially, like Germany in particular. We've been very successful in the last year or so. So building the sales team really, and stepping into some new markets in kind of mostly Northern Europe and European markets. So that's where we see the growth will come from. Interesting you talk about that kind of model, but our existing customer base, we're a SaaS model, so the grow, land and expand type of model is also really important to nurture existing customers. We have a very low churn rate in Scurry, so churn rate is extremely low, very high net promoter score. So keeping focused on our net promoter score, focusing on our customers, which is one of our values. We tend not to lose customers, and the customers that we have tend to grow with us and beyond, faster than us in a lot of cases. So that's fantastic.
Certainly is. How important are relationships?
Oh, absolutely, totally important. Everything's about relationships, relationships with your employees, relationship with your suppliers, relationships with your customers. I believe that business is done through people do business with people, and relationships are probably one of the most important things. So having a great product is great, but if you have a great relationship with your customers, sometimes they can forgive where you have maybe not as good product in a particular area as your maybe competitor, but they know that you can provide the service and you're willing to work on that and fix that for them. So I think relationships are absolutely key.
Is there a tool out there that you can't live without? And I have a second part to that question, and I asked that question because I saw that you posted on LinkedIn within the last 2 months about a tool that you use, never heard before, called Officevibe.
Oh yeah, so Officevibe, we use internally Officevibe. We've been using it since very early days in the company. And what Officevibe is, it provides a pulse from your employees every week. So it asks a few simple questions every week of your employees around various areas. How they feel about support, mentorship, physical environment, virtual environment, all that kind of stuff. And it just gives me back a dashboard in terms of how our employees feel. And our employees often put in kind of really interesting comments. I think I posted one of them there recently. That's probably what you saw, where somebody had kind of talked about how they could grow and develop within the company. And I think at the point I was making is sometimes, and rightly so, we kind of look at all the problems that we have and we try to fix them, but often there's some great stuff that goes on in an organization, and it's important to look at that too and see if you can do more of that, because that's obviously what's important for employees or customers as well. Similarly, what you do really well, and not just fix the stuff that you do badly, but can you do the stuff you do really well even better.
2 final questions for you, Rory. Have you got a personal definition of what success means to you?
Yeah, I do have a personal definition of success. I mean, I think what's really important is to reflect on what success is. So it's a combination of some personal objectives that I have, and some business objectives. And, you know, each year I'd take some time a little bit earlier than this in the year to actually look at the year that's gone by, kind of reflect on, you know, what, you know, how did I do against the objectives that I set, reset them for the new year, and do a few exercises like I would, you know, what may have held me back, what, you know, helped me to achieve, what has happened, what did I feel good about, what did I feel bad about, all that kind of stuff, and just take a day to, you know, go through that, set some objectives. So the objectives and success are quite, you know, they're targeted and it's set for each year period, and it can change over time. And I think it's important to do that. And again, try and keep it simple, not have 20 things, but try and get it down to, you know, that kind of 3 or 4 things that you can do and work on each quarter, and break it down to, well, what am I going to do each week, and even down to each day. Because if you have something that's, you know, for you is success, you need to work on it all the time, and you need to be moving towards, you know, that success. There's no point in just putting it down in a notebook and closing the notebook and saying, yeah, I hope that's going to happen. You've got to work on it. If it's that important to you and you think that's success for you, whatever that may be. For some of us, it's, you know, it's about, you know, I don't know, walking, you know, walking 20K. For somebody else, it's climbing a mountain. For somebody else, it's, you know, having family, whatever it is, you know, you just need to write that down, I think, and work on it. If you leave it to chance, it's left to chance.
Agreed. Final question. If you were the Minister for Education and you had the ability to add a new mandatory subject to the secondary school curriculum, what would it be and why?
Mandatory subject. Whoa. I think I would change that. If I was Minister for Education, I would find a way to teach important subjects like maths differently. So I think maths is just so important. I wasn't great at it myself. I've gotten a lot better because, you know, you need to be able to, you know, to everything that we do in business, as, you know, there's an underlying kind of metric and statistics, etc. And I think that, you know, we should relook at the way that we teach a lot of subjects to make it interesting for people. I don't know if the Leaving Cert really suits everybody, and I think I don't know what the better way is, but if I had time and I was the Minister for Education, and, you know, I had a team that could actually invest some time in that, I would certainly look at, see, is there a better way to teach subjects like maths, which are so essential to everybody in what most people do. Yeah.
Rory O'Connor, founder and CEO of Scurri. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I wish you continued success going forward.
Delighted to be on, Rian. Thanks very much.